My sister Sophia looked radiant in her white gown, all lace and pearls and 23-year-old optimism. I watched from my assigned seat at table 12. The family overflow section, tucked near the kitchen doors where the catering staff rushed past with trays of champagne I couldn't afford to drink. The Grand Marquis Ballroom in downtown Chicago was everything a wedding venue should be. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. The kind of place that whispered old money and new beginnings. Security had already been paged from the front desk. The badge check had flagged him, and 2 guards were on their way. I'd left Lily with Camilla 3 hours ago, my 5-year-old daughter's disappointed face still fresh in my mind. She'd wanted to come, to wear the burgundy dress we'd found at the thrift store, to see Aunt Sophia get married. But Camilla, my best friend and lifesaver, had convinced me otherwise. Formal weddings and kindergartners didn't mix well. Better to keep Lily home where she could watch her favorite movies, and avoid the family scrutiny that would inevitably fall on me. The scrutiny had started the moment I walked through the doors at 7:30. Alone, 28 years old, single mother, wearing a dress I'd bought 2 years ago that still looked decent if you didn't examine the hem too closely. My cousin Vanessa had swept past me in the receiving line, her designer maternity gown showing off a 7-month pregnancy that she wore like a crown. Her husband, my ex-husband, had given me a nod so brief it barely qualified as acknowledgement. Tyler, the man who'd walked out when the pregnancy test came back positive, who'd married my wealthy cousin 6 months later, who now stood across the ballroom looking like he'd never made the biggest mistake of his life. Meanwhile, I worked 12-hour shifts at Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago, came home to a daughter who asked why she didn't have a daddy, and tried not to calculate how many extra shifts I'd need to cover next month's rent. "Jessica, darling, you came alone?" My mother's voice carried that particular tone that managed to sound concerned and disappointed simultaneously. She'd appeared at my table during the cocktail hour, my father trailing behind her with the same uncomfortable expression he always wore when forced to acknowledge his daughter's failures. "We'd hoped you might bring someone. There are several eligible men here from the Martinelli family. You remember them, don't you? They own that restaurant chain." "I'm fine, Mom." I'd forced a smile I didn't feel. "Lily sends her love to Sophia." "Oh, yes. The baby." My mother's use of the word baby for my 5-year-old daughter spoke volumes. "Camilla's watching her, I assume? Such a shame you can't afford a real nanny." They'd moved on before I could respond, circulating among guests who actually mattered. Family who'd made something of themselves. My older sister Lauren and her surgeon husband. Cousins with graduate degrees and stock portfolios. And then there was me, the pediatric nurse who'd dropped out of med school when she got pregnant, who lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that was optimistically described as up and coming. I tapped 911 and left the line open in my pocket, letting the dispatcher triangulate while the building's doorman was alerted by a neighbor's text. Giovanni begged me not to formalize a report yet, not until we knew which faction would retaliate fastest. Dinner had been interminable. 7 courses of food I barely tasted while conversations swirled around me. The couple to my left discussed their vacation home in Aspen. The woman across from me showed off an engagement ring that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. I smiled and nodded and wondered if anyone would notice if I left early. Then came the dancing. The DJ announced the couple's first dance, and Sophia floated across the floor in her new husband's arms. My parents danced next, looking every bit the proud family. Lauren and her husband joined them. Even my younger cousins paired off, laughing and spinning under lights that cast everything in soft focus. Outside the windows, clouds had gathered over Chicago's skyline. The weather forecast had promised clear skies all weekend, but nature had other plans. Thunder rumbled in the distance, barely audible over the music. Within minutes, water began streaming down the glass in sheets, turning the city lights into abstract streaks of color. "May I have this dance?" Tyler's voice behind me made every muscle in my body tense. I turned to find him standing there alone, Vanessa presumably taking a bathroom break, or holding court somewhere with her gaggle of admirers. "No, thank you." I kept my voice level. Professional. The same tone I used with difficult parents in the pediatric ward. "Come on, Jess." For old time's sake. He was using that boyish charm that had worked on me once upon a time. before I'd realized charm was all he had to offer. We can be adults about this. We are being adults. I'm declining your invitation. I turned back toward the dance floor, hoping he'd take the hint and leave. He didn't. You know, it doesn't have to be like this between us. I know I made mistakes, but Tyler, I stood, suddenly exhausted by the entire charade. Go back to your pregnant wife. Dance with her. Leave me alone. My pregnant wife who's carrying my legitimate child, he said. And there it was, the cruelty that lurked beneath his charm. Unlike the mistake that cost you your medical degree, I should have slapped him, should have caused a scene, should have done anything other than stand there while he walked away, rejoining Vanessa, who'd appeared at the edge of the dance floor. She looked at me across the room, one hand on her rounded belly, and smiled a victor's smile. The music shifted to something slower, more romantic. Couples filled the floor, swaying together while the storm outside matched the one building in my chest. I sank back into my chair at table 12 and tried very hard not to cry in front of 200 people who already pitied me. That's when I noticed him. He stood near the bar, apart from the crowd, but somehow commanding attention anyway. Tall, maybe 6'3", with dark hair cut short, and a body that suggested he spent serious time in a gym. His suit was black and perfectly tailored, the kind of quality you didn't find in department stores. But it was his face that held my attention. Sharp cheekbones. A jaw that could have been carved from stone. And eyes that, even from across the ballroom, seemed to see straight through every defense I'd spent years constructing. He was watching me. Not subtly. Not with the passing curiosity of a stranger at a wedding. He was studying me with an intensity that should have made me uncomfortable, but instead sent a completely different kind of shiver down my spine. I looked away first, heat rising in my cheeks. When I glanced back, he was speaking with someone from the groom's family. I recognized the older Martinelli brother who owned several Italian restaurants throughout Chicago. They exchanged a few words, and then the stranger began moving through the crowd, toward me. My first instinct was to run, to grab my clutch and make some excuse about checking on Lily. But something kept me frozen in my seat at table 12 while he crossed the ballroom with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. He stopped at my table. Up close, he was even more striking. Those eyes I'd noticed from across the room were light brown, almost amber in the chandelier light. A thin scar marked his chin on the right side, barely visible but somehow adding to rather than detracting from his appeal. He smelled expensive. Cedar and something darker I couldn't name. You've been sitting alone all evening, he said. His voice carried a slight accent that made me think of old movies and Italian villas. That seems like a waste. I'm fine, I managed, though my pulse had picked up speed. Thank you for your concern. I don't think you are fine. He pulled out the chair beside me without asking permission and sat down. The movement was fluid, practiced. I think you're miserable, and trying very hard not to show it. The observation was so accurate it stole my breath. You don't know anything about me. I know you came alone to a family wedding where everyone else is paired off. I know that man who approached you earlier said something that made you want to disappear. I know you've been checking your phone every 15 minutes, probably thinking about leaving. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Am I wrong? That's very observant of you. I set my phone down, suddenly aware of how transparent I must be. Are you a friend of the bride or groom? Neither. Business associate of the Martinellis. He gestured toward the family I'd seen him speaking with. They invited me. Giovanni Fioreldi. He extended his hand. I took it, and his palm was warm against mine, his grip confident without being aggressive. Jessica Reed. Jessica. He said my name like he was tasting it. The bride's sister. The one who came alone. Word travels fast. In certain circles, everything travels fast. He released my hand, but didn't move away. I have a proposition for you, Jessica Reed. This should have been where I made my excuses and left. Where I remembered I was a single mother with responsibilities and bills, and no room in my life for mysterious strangers with expensive suits and dangerous eyes. Instead, I heard myself say, "What kind of proposition?" Giovanni leaned closer, his voice dropping low enough that only I could hear over the music. Dance with me. Pretend to be my wife for the rest of the evening. Let everyone here see that you're not alone, not pitied, not forgotten. I stared at him. You want me to pretend to be married to you? To a complete stranger? Why not? It solves both our problems. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in those amber eyes. My family is relentless about wanting me to settle down. Your family clearly enjoys reminding you that you're single. We could help each other. That's insane. Perhaps. He stood, offering his hand again. But the next song is starting, and your ex-husband is watching us from across the room with a very interesting expression on his face. So what do you say, Jessica? Will you dance with me and let everyone think you belong to someone who actually appreciates you? The smart answer was no. The responsible answer was no. The safe answer was definitely no. I took his hand and stood. One dance. That's all. His smile was devastating. We'll see about that. Giovanni led me onto the dance floor with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. His hand settled at the small of my back, warm through the thin fabric of my dress, while his other hand clasped mine with surprising gentleness. For a man built like he could break things without effort, his touch was remarkably controlled. You dance well, I said as we began moving to the music. He moved like someone who'd been trained, each step precise and effortless. My mother insisted on lessons when I was young. She believed a man should know how to lead properly. Something flickered across his face when he mentioned her. She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, but they were all I had. She would have liked you. Giovanni's amber eyes met mine. She had strong opinions about women who could stand on their own feet, who didn't need a man but chose one anyway. Is that what you think I'm doing? Choosing you? I couldn't help the slight edge to my voice. We just met. This is pretend. For now. His hand pressed slightly more firmly against my back, guiding me through a turn. But pretend has a way of becoming real when two people are honest about what they want. I should have pulled away. Should have reminded him this was temporary. A single dance to save face in front of people whose opinions shouldn't have mattered. Instead, I found myself moving closer, drawn by the warmth of him, and the way he looked at me like I was worth looking at. The song shifted into another slow melody. Around us, couples continued swaying. I caught glimpses of familiar faces watching us with varying degrees of surprise. My mother's eyebrows had climbed toward her hairline. Lauren looked intrigued rather than judgmental for once. And Tyler was staring from his position near the bar with an expression I couldn't quite read. Your ex-husband is very interested in our dance, Giovanni observed quietly. How do you know he's my ex? The way he looked at you when he approached earlier. Like he owned something he'd thrown away and suddenly wanted back now that someone else was picking it up. Giovanni's jaw tightened fractionally. Men like that are predictable. You don't know anything about him. I know he abandoned you when you needed him most. I know he married your cousin out of spite or convenience. And I know he's not worth the tears you've been holding back all evening. Giovanni's voice remained level, but steel ran beneath the calm surface. Am I wrong about any of that? I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. You're very presumptuous. I prefer observant. He guided me through another turn. And I'm right, aren't I? Being right doesn't give you the right to say whatever you want. No, but being honest does. We danced in silence for a moment before he spoke again. I apologize if I've overstepped. It's a fault of mine. I see problems and I want to fix them. I'm not a problem that needs fixing. No. You're a woman who deserves better than what life has dealt her recently. His thumb traced a small circle against my back, the gesture unconscious and somehow intimate. Let me give you that. Just for tonight. The song ended. Applause rippled through the ballroom. Giovanni released me slowly, as if reluctant to let go, then offered his arm. Shall we return to your table? I believe your family will have questions. They did. The moment we sat down, Giovanni pulling out my chair with the ease of someone raised with old-world manners, my cousin Sandra descended on us like a hawk spotting prey. Jessica, you didn't mention you were bringing someone. Her smile was predatory. Aren't you going to introduce us? This is Giovanni Fioraldi, I said, trying to sound casual. Giovanni, this is my cousin Sandra. A pleasure. Giovanni's smile was polite and gave nothing away. Your family throws beautiful weddings. Oh, I'm not immediate family. Just a cousin. Sandra's eyes raked over him, cataloging every expensive detail. "Are you from Chicago, Mr. Fioreldi?" "I am now. My family is originally from Naples, but business brought me here several years ago." He draped his arm across the back of my chair, the gesture possessive and protective at once. "Jessica and I have been seeing each other for a few months. Quietly, she prefers to keep her private life private." The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly I almost believed it myself. Sandra looked between us, clearly trying to reconcile this new information with everything she thought she knew about my life. "A few months? Jessica, you never said anything. Like Giovanni mentioned, I prefer privacy." I reached for my water glass, needing something to do with my hands, especially after everything with Tyler. Sandra nodded knowingly. "Of course. That must have been so difficult. But it looks like you've landed on your feet." She leaned closer, lowering her voice to what she probably thought was discreet. "He's gorgeous. Where did you two meet?" "The hospital," Giovanni answered before I could stumble through my own lie. "My business partner's son was admitted to the pediatric ward. Jessica was his nurse. She saved his life with her quick thinking during a complication." He looked at me with such apparent affection that my breath caught. "I asked her to coffee to thank her. She said no 3 times before finally agreeing." "That sounds like Jessica." Sandra laughed. "Always so serious." More family members approached throughout the evening. Giovanni handled each interrogation with the same effortless charm, weaving details into our fake relationship that sounded entirely believable. He remembered everything I'd told him during our dance and incorporated it seamlessly. When my aunt asked about my daughter, he knew Lily's name and age without hesitation, mentioned her love of drawing and how bright she was for 5 years old. "You're very good at this," I murmured, when we finally had a moment alone. The reception had moved into the later hours, guests loosening up as the alcohol flowed, and the dancing grew less formal. "At lying?" Giovanni's mouth curved. "It's a necessary skill in my world." "What world is that exactly?" "You said business, but you never specified what kind." "Import and export, among other things." His hand found mine on the table, fingers lacing through mine. "I own several restaurants throughout Chicago. The Martinelli family supplies some of our ingredients through their connections. That's why I was invited tonight." "Restaurants?" I studied his face, looking for tells. "That's it? Would you prefer if I said I was something more dangerous?" His thumb traced circles on my palm. "Would that make this more exciting for you?" "This isn't about excitement." I tried to pull my hand away, but he held firm. Not aggressive, just insistent. "This is about getting through one evening without being the family charity case." "You're not a charity case, Jessica. You're a woman who works 12-hour shifts taking care of sick children, who raises a daughter alone, who still manages to look beautiful even when you're exhausted and surrounded by people who don't appreciate you." His voice dropped lower. "That's not charity. That's strength." The intensity in his gaze made my skin flush. Before I could respond, a presence loomed over our table. I looked up to find Tyler standing there, Vanessa notably absent. "Can we talk?" Tyler's eyes were on me, pointedly ignoring Giovanni. "Outside, just for a minute. I don't think... It's fine." Giovanni released my hand and stood. "I need to speak with the Martinellis anyway." "Take your time." He walked away before I could protest, leaving me alone with the man who'd broken every promise he'd ever made to me. Tyler sat in Giovanni's vacated chair, his cologne overwhelming in its familiarity. "Who is that guy?" Tyler demanded without preamble. "And don't give me the hospital story. That's obviously bullshit." "Why would it be bullshit?" "I work at a hospital. People meet there all the time." "Because you would have mentioned him. You tell Camilla everything, and Camilla can't keep a secret from anyone." Tyler leaned closer. "I've been asking around. Nobody's heard of any Giovanni Fioreldi in the medical community. He's not in the medical community. His business partner's son was a patient." I stood, suddenly exhausted by this entire conversation. "And frankly, Tyler, who I'm seeing is none of your business. You made that clear when you walked out while I was pregnant. That was different. I wasn't ready to be a father. But you're ready now? With Vanessa." I gestured toward where his wife stood across the ballroom, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. "Or is this baby more legitimate because she can afford the life you wanted?" Tyler's face darkened. "Don't act like you're better than us. You're the one showing up with some stranger, pretending you've moved on. Maybe I have moved on. The words felt true as I said them, even though Giovanni was a fabrication, a convenient fiction to get through one night. Maybe I'm finally happy. Happy? Tyler laughed, harsh and bitter. Jess, look at your life. You're a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. You work yourself half to death and still can't afford decent childcare. That guy in the expensive suit? He's not going to stick around when he realizes what a mess your life actually is. The words hit their target, each one a reminder of everything I already knew. But before I could respond, Giovanni reappeared at my side. Is there a problem? His voice was silk over steel. No problem. Tyler stood. Just catching up with my ex-wife. Then you're finished catching up. Giovanni's hand settled at my waist. The storm is getting worse. I'm going to drive Jessica home. Unless you have any objection? It wasn't really a question. Tyler looked between us, clearly wanting to say something. But apparently even he recognized when he was outmatched. He walked away without another word. I can call a car, I said once Tyler was gone. You don't have to. The rain is heavy. Let me drive you. Giovanni retrieved my clutch from the table. Unless you're uncomfortable being alone with me. I should have been. Every logical part of my brain screamed that accepting a ride from a stranger was foolish. But Giovanni didn't feel like a stranger. He felt like someone who saw me clearly and decided I was worth protecting anyway. Okay, I heard myself say. Thank you. The SUV waiting outside was sleek and black, a driver already behind the wheel. Giovanni opened the back door for me, and I slid across leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He climbed in beside me, close but not crowding, and gave the driver my address before I could even ask how he knew where I lived. Your cousin Sandra mentioned it earlier, he explained, reading my expression. The building near the park. She was very proud of herself for knowing. The drive through Chicago's rain-soaked streets gave us privacy the ballroom hadn't afforded. City lights streaked past the tinted windows, turning everything into abstract art. Thank you, I said finally. For tonight. For what you did. It was mutually beneficial. Giovanni turned to face me, his features half in shadow. But I meant what I said earlier. About continuing this arrangement. For a few weeks, until your family stops asking questions, and mine stops pressuring me about marriage. That's insane. You said that before. And yet you agreed to dance with me. His hand found mine in the darkness between us. Think about it practically, Jessica. You need breathing room from family expectations. I need the same. We can help each other. By lying to everyone we know. By giving ourselves space to exist without constant judgment. He squeezed my hand gently. A few weeks, that's all. After that, we can stage a quiet breakup. No one gets hurt. Everyone gets relief. I knew I should say no. Knew this was a terrible idea that could only end badly. But sitting in that car, still feeling the ghost of his hand at my back from our dance, I found myself considering it. I have a 5-year-old daughter, I said finally. She can't know about this. I won't confuse her with fake relationships. Agreed. This stays between adults. And if either of us wants out, we walk away. No drama. Of course. Giovanni reached into his jacket and withdrew a business card. Think about it. Call me if you decide you want to take me up on the offer. The car pulled up to my building. Giovanni walked me to the door despite the rain, waited until I was inside, then returned to his vehicle. I watched from the lobby as the SUV disappeared into Chicago's stormy night. The card in my hand felt heavier than it should. I should throw it away. Should forget the whole evening and go back to my normal life of 12-hour shifts and mounting bills and family dinners, where I was everyone's favorite example of what not to do. Instead, I tucked the card into my clutch and headed upstairs, already knowing I was going to make a terrible decision. Monday morning arrived with the sharp buzz of my alarm at 6. I dragged myself out of bed after 3 hours of restless sleep, my mind still replaying Saturday night in fragments. Giovanni's hand at my back. The way Tyler's face had darkened when he saw us together. That business card, burning a hole in my wallet where I'd tucked it despite every logical reason to throw it away. Lily was already awake when I checked her room, building something elaborate with her blocks while humming a song I didn't recognize. She looked up with those blue eyes that were pure Tyler genetics, though thankfully that's all she'd inherited from him. "Morning, baby. Did you have fun with Camilla on Saturday? We made cookies and watched the princess movie 3 times. She abandoned her blocks to wrap her arms around my legs. "Camilla said you went to Aunt Sophia's wedding. Was it pretty?" "Very pretty." I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the baby shampoo scent that clung to her hair. "Get dressed while I make breakfast, okay? We have to leave in 40 minutes. The 12-hour shift at Lurie Children's started at 7 sharp. I dropped Lily at her kindergarten program by 6:30, then fought Monday morning traffic to reach the hospital with 3 minutes to spare. The pediatric ward welcomed me with its familiar chaos of beeping monitors, worried parents, and the antiseptic smell that had become as common as breathing. My phone started buzzing before I'd even finished morning rounds. Text after text from family members who'd apparently spent their Sunday discussing my mysterious appearance at the wedding with a man none of them had known existed. My cousin Sandra. "Call me ASAP, need details about Giovanni." Lauren. "Mom is losing her mind. Who is he? Why didn't you tell anyone?" Even my mother, who barely texted, had sent a terse message. "We need to talk about Saturday night. Your father and I are very concerned." I silenced my phone and shoved it into my scrubs pocket. Whatever fallout was coming from Saturday's performance could wait until I wasn't responsible for keeping small humans alive. The morning passed in a blur of IV checks, medication rounds, and comforting a 7-year-old girl who'd come in with a severe asthma attack. By noon, I'd managed to push thoughts of Giovanni and his ridiculous proposal to the back of my mind. This was my real life. Sick kids and overworked nurses and making I save children for a living, which pays enough to survive, but never enough to quiet the worry. I was updating a patient chart when Tyler appeared in the hallway outside the nurse's station. He shouldn't have been able to get past security without a patient relation. But Tyler had always been good at talking his way into places he didn't belong. "We need to talk." He planted himself in front of me, blocking my path. "Now. I'm working." I tried to step around him. "And you're not supposed to be up here without authorization." I told them I was visiting my daughter. His jaw was tight, that vein in his temple throbbing the way it always did when he was angry. "Which I should be able to do, by the way. You never let me see Lily. You never asked to see Lily." I kept my voice low, aware of the other nurses pretending not to listen. "And she's not a patient here, so that excuse won't hold up if security checks." Tyler moved closer, lowering his voice to match mine. "Who is Giovanni Fioraldi? And don't give me that hospital story again. I've been asking around. Nobody in Chicago's medical community has heard of him. Maybe because he's not in the medical community. Maybe because his life doesn't revolve around impressing people in your social circle." I finally managed to step around him. "Now leave before I call security myself. Is he paying you?" The question stopped me cold. I turned back slowly. "Is that what this is? Some arrangement where he gives you money and you show up at events pretending to be his girlfriend?" The accusation stung more than it should have. "Get out, Tyler. Because that would make sense. You need the money. He clearly has it. And you've never been above taking handouts when it suited you. I've never taken a dime from you or anyone else." My hands clenched into fists at my sides. "I work for everything I have. Everything Lily has. So whatever fantasy you've constructed where I'm some desperate woman selling herself for financial security, you can keep it to yourself." "Then what is he?" Tyler demanded. "What does he want from you? Nothing you ever wanted. Apparently that includes basic respect." I turned toward the nurse's station. "Security, please. We have an unauthorized visitor." Tyler left before security arrived, but not before shooting me a look that promised this conversation wasn't over. I spent the rest of my shift shaking, adrenaline making my hands unsteady enough that I had to ask another nurse to help with a particularly tricky IV insertion. The shift ended at 7. I picked up Lily from the after-school program, listened to her chatter about the art project they'd done, and drove us home through evening traffic that gave me too much time to think about Tyler's accusations, about Giovanni's card still in my wallet, about how close I was to calling that number and agreeing to something I knew was a terrible idea. Camilla was waiting when we got home at 8, as she did every Tuesday evening, our weekly tradition of dinner together, the only real social life I had outside of work and motherhood. She'd brought Chinese takeout and that particular expression that said she had questions I wouldn't want to answer. So, Camilla waited until Lily was occupied with her egg rolls before leaning across my kitchen table. Sandra called me today. And Lauren. And your mother. All wanting to know if I knew about this Giovanni person you're apparently dating. I'm not dating him. I pushed lo mein around my plate without eating it. It was one night. A favor. We danced at the wedding and pretended to be together so my family would stop treating me like the resident failure. A favor. Camilla's dark eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. Jess. Nobody does favors like that for strangers. What does he want? He wants his family to stop pressuring him about getting married. I want my family to stop pitying me. It was mutually beneficial. Was. Is. I corrected myself, then immediately regretted it. Maybe. He suggested we continue the arrangement for a few weeks, just until everyone stops asking questions. Camilla sat back in her chair. This is insane. You know this is insane, right? I'm aware. I finally met her eyes, but you weren't there Saturday night. You didn't see the way everyone looked at me, or the way Tyler acted like he had any right to an opinion about my life. For one evening, I felt like someone who mattered. Is that really so terrible? Not terrible. Just dangerous. Camilla reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me if this guy turns out to be bad news, you'll walk away. I promise. The lie came easily. I was already planning to call Giovanni the moment Camilla left. She stayed until 9:30, helping me get Lily bathed and into bed. After she left, I cleaned the kitchen and tried to convince myself that calling Giovanni was a mistake. That continuing this farce would only make things worse when it inevitably fell apart. I was still debating with myself at 10:15 when someone knocked on my apartment door. Heavy, insistent. Not the friendly tap of a neighbor borrowing sugar. I checked the peephole. 2 men stood in my hallway. Both looked like they'd come straight from central casting for a crime drama. Dark clothes, cold expressions. One had a tattoo creeping up his neck that I could see even through the fisheye lens. Jessica Reed. The taller one spoke with an accent I couldn't place. Russian, maybe. We need to talk about Giovanni Fioraldi. Every instinct screamed at me not to open that door. I don't know who you're talking about. We saw the photos. From the wedding. The second man held up his phone, showing me an image I recognized. Me and Giovanni on the dance floor, his hand at my back, both of us looking at each other like we actually belonged together. You're his woman. That makes you someone we're interested in talking to. I'm not his anything. We're friends, that's all. My hand found my phone in my pocket. And if you don't leave, I'm calling the police. Call them. The taller man shrugged. We'll be gone before they arrive. But we'll be back, Jessica Reed. And next time, we hope you'll be more cooperative. Mr. Volkov doesn't like being ignored. I was done being a currency. If they had ever used my name to trade favors, I needed to be present to bankrupt its value. I wore a thin underlayer panel under my coat and left a driver idling, engine warm, phone on speaker to a doctor who owed Giovanni a favor. They walked away before I could respond. I stood frozen behind my locked door, heart hammering, phone clutched in my shaking hand. I had no idea who Mr. Volkov was or what these men wanted with Giovanni. But I knew with bone-deep certainty that I'd just stumbled into something far more dangerous than a fake relationship. I pulled Giovanni's card from my wallet, stared at the number embossed in silver against black cardstock. This was the moment to walk away, to tell him whatever arrangement he'd been imagining wouldn't work, because strange men were showing up at my door, asking questions I couldn't answer. Instead, I dialed. He answered on the second ring. Jessica. 2 men just came to my apartment. The words tumbled out. They had photos from the wedding. They mentioned someone named Volkov. They threatened to come back. Silence. Then, lock your door. Don't open it for anyone. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Giovanni, what's happening? Who are these people? I'll explain when I get there. Just stay inside and keep Lily close. The line went dead. I checked all the locks. Peeked in on Lily, who was sleeping peacefully with her stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest, completely unaware that her mother had just dragged them both into something that felt like it could swallow us whole. True to his word, Giovanni appeared at my door exactly 14 minutes later. I verified through the peephole before opening it, finding him accompanied by another man who looked like he could bench press a car without breaking a sweat. "This is Franco, my associate." Giovanni stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his eyes scanning my small apartment with the practiced assessment of someone used to evaluating threats. "Tell me exactly what they said." I recounted the encounter while Franco positioned himself near the window, watching the street below. Giovanni's expression grew darker with each detail, that thin scar on his chin somehow more prominent as his jaw tightened. "The Bratva," he said finally. "Russian organization. They've been pushing into territories that don't belong to them. Someone sent them photos from the wedding. Told them you're connected to me." "Connected how? We barely know each other." But even as I said it, I remembered that dance, the way he'd looked at me, how easy it had been to forget the whole thing was staged. They don't care about facts. They care about leverage. Giovanni moved to the window beside Franco, speaking to him in rapid Italian before turning back to me. "This is my fault. I should have anticipated this. What do they want?" "To use you to get to me, to pressure me into giving ground in negotiations I can't afford to lose." His eyes met mine. "I'm sorry, Jessica. This wasn't supposed to touch you." "Then maybe we should end this now. Tell them it was fake, that I mean nothing to you." "It's too late for that." Franco spoke up for the first time. "They've already decided your leverage. Whether the relationship is real or not doesn't matter." I sank onto my couch, legs suddenly unable to hold me. "So what happens now?" Giovanni crossed to kneel in front of me, bringing us eye to eye. "Now I keep you safe. You and Lily both. But you need to trust me." "Can you do that?" I should have said no. Should have told him to leave and take his dangerous world with him. Should have called the police and let them handle whatever mess I'd accidentally stepped into. Instead, I looked into those amber eyes and heard myself say, yes. Within 30 minutes, I'd packed bags for Lily and myself while she slept through it all, blissfully unaware that her mother had accidentally dragged them into a war between organized crime factions. Camilla arrived 20 minutes after I called her, eyes wide with fear, but moving with the efficiency of someone who'd spent 5 years helping me navigate crises. "Tell me this is temporary," she whispered as we gathered Lily's favorite toys and books. "Tell me you're not really involved with whatever this is. It's supposed to be temporary." I stuffed clothes into a duffel bag without bothering to fold them. It was supposed to be a fake relationship for a few weeks. Now apparently the Russian mob thinks I'm leverage. The Russian mob. Camilla sat down hard on Lily's bed. "Jesus, Jess. What have you gotten yourself into?" "I don't know." My hands shook as I zipped the bag closed. "But Giovanni says he can keep us safe. That's all I care about right now." Giovanni's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a building in Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood. The address alone probably cost more than I'd make in 10 years. Franco drove us there in an SUV with tinted windows, taking a route that seemed designed to lose anyone who might be following. Giovanni rode in a second vehicle with additional security I hadn't even known existed until tonight. The elevator required a key card to access the penthouse levels. When the doors opened, I stepped into a space that looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan. Modern furniture in neutral tones. Art on the walls that I suspected wasn't prints. Everything pristine and expensive and absolutely nothing like the cramped 1-bedroom apartment Lily and I called home. "The guest rooms are on the 2nd floor. Giovanni gestured toward a floating staircase. 3 bedrooms, all with private bathrooms. Take whichever you prefer. Camilla, there's a room for you as well." "I'm staying too?" Camilla looked between us. "Until we're certain the threat has passed, yes." Giovanni's tone left no room for argument. "Anyone connected to Jessica is potentially at risk. That includes you. How long are we talking? Days? Weeks?" I adjusted my grip on the bag containing Lily's things. "I have to work. Lily has school. We have lives that don't stop just because—" "I've already arranged coverage for your shifts at the hospital." Giovanni cut me off gently. "Called in a favor with the hospital administrator. You're on paid family emergency leave for the next 2 weeks. Lily's school has been notified that she's dealing with a family situation. A private tutor will come here daily to ensure she doesn't fall behind. You had no right to do that without asking me." I had every right to keep you alive. His amber eyes held mine. This is my world, Jessica. My rules. And my rules say we don't take chances with civilians who get caught in crossfire because of decisions I made. Lily stirred in my arms, making a small, sleepy sound. Giovanni's expression softened immediately. Let's get her settled. We can argue about my overreach in the morning. The bedroom he led us to was easily twice the size of my apartment's living room. A king bed dominated one wall, dressed in linens that probably had a thread count I couldn't fathom. An ensuite bathroom featured a shower with multiple heads and a soaking tub. Lily's eyes opened briefly as I laid her on the bed, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings with the confused acceptance of a 5-year-old woken in the middle of the night. Where are we? She mumbled. At a friend's house, baby. We're having a sleepover. I brushed hair from her forehead. Go back to sleep, okay? She was out again within seconds, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Giovanni stood in the doorway, watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. She's beautiful, he said quietly. She has your eyes. She has her father's everything else. I tucked the blanket around her shoulders, which is probably for the best. At least she got his cheekbones. I doubt that's the best she got. Giovanni stepped into the room, moving with surprising quiet for someone his size. He stopped beside the bed, looking down at Lily with genuine interest, rather than the polite disinterest most childless adults showed. How old did you say she was? 5. She'll be 6 in March. I smoothed the blanket one more time, needing something to do with my hands. She's smart. Top of her class in reading. Loves drawing and dinosaurs and asking questions I don't always know how to answer. Like what? Like why her daddy doesn't come see her? Or why some kids have 2 parents and she only has 1. The words came out rougher than I intended. She stopped asking as much after Tyler got remarried. I think even at 5, she understood that ship had sailed. Giovanni's jaw tightened. He's a fool. He's a lot of things. Fool is probably the kindest. We stood there in silence, watching Lily sleep. It felt strangely intimate, this shared vigil over my daughter, like we were partners in her protection rather than strangers thrown together by circumstances neither of us had planned. I should let you rest. Giovanni moved toward the door. If you need anything, there's an intercom system. Just press the button and someone will respond. Giovanni, I stopped him before he could leave. Thank you for all of this. I know I don't fully understand what's happening or why, but thank you for keeping her safe. Something flickered in his eyes. I'll always keep her safe, Jessica. Both of you. That's a promise. The next 3 days blurred into a surreal existence that felt nothing like my real life. I woke Wednesday morning to find Lily already up and exploring the penthouse with the fearless curiosity of childhood. Camilla was in the kitchen making breakfast while Giovanni conducted a meeting via phone in his study, speaking rapid Italian that sounded both beautiful and vaguely threatening. A pediatrician arrived at 10 to give Lily a complete checkup. I stood by, reflexively ready to intervene, but the doctor was gentle and thorough, and clearly accustomed to working with anxious mothers. Giovanni appeared halfway through the exam, asking intelligent questions about Lily's vaccination schedule and whether her recent cold had fully resolved. You remember I mentioned a cold? I asked after the doctor left, giving Lily a clean bill of health. You told me she'd missed school 2 weeks ago because of it. At the wedding. Giovanni handed Lily a tablet loaded with educational games. I pay attention when people tell me things, Jessica. Thursday brought the private tutor, a cheerful woman named Mrs. Patel, who had Lily reading and practicing math within minutes. Giovanni sat in on part of the lesson, then surprised both of us by helping Lily with a drawing project afterward. He drew with the competence of someone who'd had training, creating a surprisingly detailed sketch of a horse that had Lily demanding he teach her the technique. My mother insisted on art lessons, he explained, guiding Lily's small hand to show her how to shade properly. She believed a well-rounded education included beauty as well as business. I watched from the kitchen where Camilla and I were pretending to discuss meal planning while actually observing Giovanni with my daughter, the way he crouched to her level when speaking to her, how he praised her efforts without condescending, the patience he showed when she asked the same question 3 times in different ways. He's good with her, Camilla murmured. Surprisingly good. I know. That scared me more than the Russian mob somehow. because Lily was already asking when we'd visit Mr. Giovanni's house again, already drawing pictures that included a tall man with dark hair standing beside us, already filling a father-shaped hole I'd tried for 5 years to pretend didn't exist. The sexual tension I'd felt at the wedding intensified with proximity. Giovanni worked from home those 3 days, conducting business from his study while I tried to occupy Lily and avoid dwelling on how aware I was of him in every room. The way he moved, how he smelled like cedar and expensive soap, the timbre of his voice when he spoke Italian on the phone, passionate and commanding in ways that made my skin flush. We'd have dinner together each evening, the 4 of us around his massive dining table. Giovanni would ask Lily about her day, listen with genuine interest to her rambling stories about the tutor and the games she'd played with Camilla. Then, after Lily went to bed, we'd sit on his terrace overlooking the lake and talk about things that had nothing to do with fake relationships or Russian threats. He told me about his mother, Sophia, who died when he was 33, how cancer had stolen her slowly, giving him months to say goodbye but never enough time, how she'd made him promise to find someone who challenged him, who wouldn't just accept his world, but would push him to be better within it. "She would have liked you," he said Thursday night, our 3rd evening on the terrace. She had strong opinions about women who stood on their own feet, who worked for what they had. She came from nothing, you know. Married my father when she was 19 and turned herself into the kind of woman who could hold her own in his world. What world is that? I'd been wanting to ask since Tuesday night. You keep referring to your business, but you've never actually told me what you do. Giovanni took a long sip of the wine he'd been nursing. I own restaurants. 4 locations throughout Chicago, all Italian cuisine. That much is true and legal. But I also oversee operations that aren't listed on any business license, territory that my father secured and I've maintained, arrangements with other organizations that keep Chicago running smoothly for those who know where to look. Your Mafia. It wasn't a question. I prefer to think of it as community organization with flexible ethics. His mouth curved slightly. But yes, if you need a simple label. My family has been involved in Chicago's less legitimate operations for 3 generations. The restaurants are real. Everything else lives in the shadows. And the Russians want those shadows for themselves. They've been pushing into territories that traditionally belong to Italian families, testing boundaries, using violence where my father would have used negotiation. He set down his wine glass. I'm trying to maintain peace. They see that as weakness. Friday afternoon, Franco appeared in Giovanni's study where I'd been reading while Lily napped. His expression was grim. "We've identified the leak," he said without preamble. "The source of the photos. The one who told the Bratva about Jessica." Giovanni stood from behind his desk. "Who?" "Her cousin, David Reed. He's been working with the Russians for 6 months, feeding them information about families they might leverage. When he saw the wedding photos on your aunt's social media, Jessica, he recognized an opportunity. My stomach dropped. David? My cousin David?" Franco nodded. "He told the Bratva about your relationship with Giovanni, even mentioned that it started as a pretense. But Dmitry Volkov, their leader, decided you were still useful leverage regardless. Where is David now?" Giovanni's voice had gone cold. "That's the other problem. The Russians have him. They're holding him as insurance. If we move against them, they'll kill him to send a message." I sat down heavily. David. Stupid, gambling-addicted David who never could hold a job. Who'd asked to borrow money at Thanksgiving and gotten angry when I'd said no. Who apparently sold out his own family to criminals to cover whatever debts he'd accumulated. "We can't just leave him there," I heard myself say. "Even if he's an idiot, he's still family. He put you and Lily at risk." Giovanni's expression was unreadable. "Family doesn't end where loyalty begins, Jessica. Maybe not, but it doesn't end where stupidity begins either." I looked up at him. "What would your mother have wanted you to do?" The question landed. Giovanni's jaw worked for a moment before he turned to Franco. "Set up a meeting with Volkov. Tell him I want to discuss terms." "That's exactly what he wants," Franco warned. "I know, but we're going to give it to him anyway." Giovanni's eyes met mine. "Because apparently, I'm developing a conscience at the worst possible time." The warehouse sat in Chicago's industrial district, close enough to the water that I could smell the lake even through the SUV's filtered air. Friday evening had turned cold, clouds hanging low and threatening rain that hadn't quite started falling. Giovanni sat beside me in the back seat, his presence both comforting and terrifying in equal measure. "You don't have to come inside," he said for the third time since we'd left the penthouse. "Franco and I can handle this. They used me as leverage. I should be there when you negotiate my freedom." I checked my phone, seeing the message from Camilla confirming Lily was asleep and asking when I'd be home. Home. Like the penthouse had become that in just 5 days. Besides, you said it yourself. Your mother would want you to show them I'm not just some pawn they can manipulate. My mother would have a lot of opinions about this situation. Giovanni's hand found mine in the darkness, most of them involving Italian phrases I shouldn't repeat in front of you. Try me. I worked in a hospital for 3 years. I've heard worse. The warehouse came into view. Concrete and rust. Windows covered with grime thick enough to block any view of the interior. 2 black sedans were already parked outside, their occupants leaning against the vehicles with the casual menace of men who'd done violence and expected to do more. Franco exited the SUV first, scanning the area with practiced efficiency before nodding to Giovanni. We stepped out into air that tasted like metal and old grease. One of the Russian men opened the warehouse door, gesturing us inside without speaking. The interior was exactly what I'd expected from every crime movie I'd ever seen. Empty space. Shipping containers stacked along the walls. Overhead lights that barely cut through the shadows. And in the center, a folding table with 3 chairs. 2 men sat on one side. The younger one I recognized from Tuesday night. The man who'd come to my apartment with photos and threats. The older man had to be Dmitry Volkov. Late 50s, gray hair cut military short, eyes that held the kind of cold I associated with men who'd learned cruelty young and perfected it over decades. Mr. Fioraldi. Volkov's English carried a thick accent but remained clear. "You brought your woman. How American of you. Jessica wanted to be here." Giovanni pulled out the chair on our side of the table for me before sitting. "Since this situation involves her directly, it involves her because you made it involve her." Volkov's gaze settled on me, assessing. "Pretty thing. I see why you would claim her at a wedding. Though our sources tell us the relationship began as performance. Fake husband for desperate single mother. Very romantic. What we started as doesn't matter." I spoke before Giovanni could respond. "You're using me to pressure him. That makes me part of this conversation." The younger Russian laughed. Volkov silenced him with a look that could have frozen fire. Bold. Volkov leaned back in his chair. "Your cousin David said you had pride. Said it's why you refused to help him when he needed money. Do you know where David is now, Jessica Reed? Franco told me you have him. We do. In a basement not far from here. He owes us $30,000 from gambling debts. We offered him a way to work it off. He gave us information about your family, about this wedding, about the photos his aunt posted on social media showing you with Mr. Fioraldi." Volkov pulled out his phone, tapping the screen before turning it to face us. "Beautiful photos. You look very happy together." The image showed Giovanni and me on the dance floor. The way we were looking at each other, even I had to admit it didn't look staged. It looked real, like 2 people who'd found something worth holding on to. David made his choices. Giovanni's voice carried steel beneath the calm surface. "What he owes you is between you and him. But Jessica is between you and me." Volkov pocketed his phone. "And that makes her valuable. So let's discuss terms. You have territory in the financial district that we want. 3 blocks. You give us those blocks. We release David. And we forget about using pretty nurses as leverage." "No." The word came from me before I'd consciously decided to speak. Both men turned to look at me with identical expressions of surprise. "You don't get to threaten people's families and then negotiate like that's reasonable behavior." "Jessica," Giovanni started. "No." I stood, adrenaline overriding every survival instinct that screamed at me to stay quiet. "You want to intimidate Giovanni? Fine, that's your world. But you came to my apartment. You threatened my home where my 5-year-old daughter sleeps. You're holding my idiot cousin who made terrible decisions but doesn't deserve whatever you're doing to him in that basement." My hands braced against the table. What kind of men threaten children? What kind of organization builds power by terrorizing women in their own homes? Volkov stared at me. The warehouse had gone silent, except for the distant sound of traffic outside. You think you can shame me? His voice remained level, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. We are not in business of shame, Miss Reed. We are in business of results. Then here's a result for you. I'm not afraid of you anymore. The lie tasted like copper, but I forced the words out. You wanted me to be leverage? You wanted Giovanni to cave because he's protecting me? Well, congratulations. You've made me understand exactly what kind of people you are. And I'm telling you right now, I'd rather watch everything fall apart than give you 1 inch of what you want through fear. Giovanni stood slowly, positioning himself slightly in front of me. Jessica speaks for both of us, but I'll offer you something better than capitulation. You want territory? Take the 3 blocks in the financial district. But in exchange, the Bratva agrees to a formal peace treaty. No more civilian threats. No more kidnapping cousins. No more showing up at apartments where children live. You would give us what we want? Volkov looked between us, clearly trying to find the trap. I would give you something I was already planning to phase out. Those 3 blocks are scheduled for major redevelopment. Commercial property values are about to tank when the city announces the new zoning laws next month. Giovanni's expression remained neutral. You want them? Take them. Deal with the headache of managing them when they become worthless. Meanwhile, we establish clear boundaries. You stay on your side. We stay on ours. And civilians remain off limits for both organizations. Volkov was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at me again. Your woman has courage. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. He stood. We accept your terms. 3 blocks. Peace treaty. Civilians are off limits. He extended his hand to Giovanni. And for what it's worth, Mr. Fioraldi, if this relationship truly started as performance, I suggest you make it real. Women who speak truth to power are rare. My wife was one. I was smart enough to keep her. The handshake happened quickly. Terms were agreed upon with the efficiency of men who understood how these arrangements worked. David would be released within the hour, deposited at a hospital with instructions not to contact his family for 6 months. The 3 blocks would transfer to Bratva control by the end of the week. We walked out of that warehouse into air that had started spitting rain. I made it to the SUV before my legs gave out, adrenaline crash hitting like a physical blow. Giovanni caught me, guiding me into the back seat before sliding in beside me. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever witnessed, Franco said from the front seat as we pulled away. I'm still deciding which. Both, I managed. Definitely both. You stood up to Dmitry Volkov. Giovanni turned to face me. Do you understand how rare that is? How few people have ever spoken to him that way and lived to tell about it? I wasn't thinking about living. I was thinking about Lily sleeping in your penthouse, about David being tortured in a basement, about how tired I am of men with power deciding who gets hurt and who gets protected. My hands shook. I'm a pediatric nurse, Giovanni. I save children for a living, which pays enough to survive, but never enough to quiet the worry. He kissed me. One moment I was spiraling into panic, and the next his mouth was on mine. Hot and demanding and tasting like everything I'd been trying not to want since Saturday night. His hand cupped my jaw, thumb tracing my cheekbone while his other arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer across the leather seat. I kissed him back, poured 5 days of tension and fear and unexpected connection into it. His lips moved against mine with a confidence that suggested he knew exactly what he was doing, and my body responded with an enthusiasm that should have embarrassed me, given Franco was 3 feet away pretending very hard not to notice. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Giovanni rested his forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that since you looked up at me from table 12 and agreed to dance, he said quietly. Since you stood in my penthouse holding your daughter and told me you didn't trust easily, but you'd trust me with her safety. Since you just stood in a warehouse and told a Russian mob boss that he couldn't threaten children in your city. Your city, I corrected. This is your world, not mine. Maybe. But you just proved you can stand in it without being swallowed. His thumb brushed across my lower lip. Jessica, this stopped being fake somewhere between Saturday and tonight. You know that, right? I did know. Had known since watching him draw horses with Lily, since he'd held my hand while talking about his mother, since I'd fallen asleep on his terrace listening to him speak Italian on the phone and feeling safer than I had in 5 years. "This is complicated," I whispered. "Everything worth having is complicated." He kissed me again, softer this time, a promise instead of a question. "Stay. Not because you're in danger. Not because of some arrangement we made at a wedding. Stay because you want to see where this goes when it's real." The SUV pulled up to the penthouse building. Franco cleared his throat quietly, a reminder that we had an audience and a 5-year-old waiting upstairs. "I have a daughter," I said. "If this falls apart, it's not just me who gets hurt. Then we make sure it doesn't fall apart." Giovanni helped me out of the vehicle. "One day at a time. One decision at a time. Starting with you deciding that what happened tonight changed things." We rode the elevator in silence. Camila met us at the door, took one look at my face, and asked 0 questions. She grabbed her jacket and let Franco drive her home, leaving Giovanni and me standing in his living room at midnight with the weight of what just happened settling between us. "I should check on Lily," I said. "You should." He didn't move to stop me. "But Jessica, think about what I said. About staying. Not as a guest. As someone who belongs here." I went upstairs to find Lily sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that her mother had just negotiated with criminals and kissed a man who made her forget every reason why she shouldn't. I watched her breathe. This perfect thing I'd created with a man who'd never deserved her, and tried to figure out if I was brave enough to risk both our hearts on someone who actually might. Downstairs, Giovanni waited. Upstairs, my daughter slept. And somewhere between those 2 floors, I made a decision that terrified me more than any Russian mobster ever could. I was falling in love with Giovanni Fioraldi, and for the first time since Tyler walked out, I was going to let myself see where that fall might lead. Sunday morning light filtered through the penthouse windows, waking me before my alarm. I'd spent most of the night replaying Friday's kiss. The warehouse, Dmitry Volkov's calculating eyes. The way Giovanni had looked at me when he said this stopped being fake somewhere along the way. I found him in the kitchen making coffee, already dressed despite it being barely 8. Lily was still asleep upstairs, giving us a rare moment of privacy. "We need to talk," he said, handing me a mug. "About what happens next." I was thinking the same thing. I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic. This whole arrangement was supposed to be temporary. A few weeks of pretending until our families backed off. But now it's complicated. Giovanni leaned against the counter, studying me with those amber eyes that saw too much. "Franco informed me this morning that David was released from the hospital. He's been told to stay away from Chicago for 6 months. The Bratva threat is neutralized. The peace treaty is holding, which means you and Lily are safe to return to your normal lives." The words should have brought relief. Instead, they felt like a door closing. "So that's it? Threat over? Arrangement ended?" I tried to keep my voice neutral. "Thank you for the hospitality. See you around?" "That's one option." Giovanni set down his coffee. "Or I can offer you another one. Franco has contacts who specialize in creating new identities. Clean documents, new city, new life. I can give you and Lily complete protection. Set you up somewhere far from Chicago where neither Tyler nor anyone from my world can touch you. Financial security. Fresh start. Everything you'd need. You're offering to make us disappear." The realization hit like cold water. To get us away from you. To give you a choice that doesn't involve staying near danger just because you feel obligated. His expression remained carefully neutral. "I brought you into this mess, Jessica. The least I can do is give you a clean exit." Before I could respond, small footsteps pounded down the stairs. Lily appeared in her pajamas, hair wild from sleep, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Morning, Mom." "Morning, Mr. Giovanni." She climbed onto a stool at the kitchen island. "Are we having pancakes?" "Mr. Giovanni makes really good pancakes." "I can make pancakes," Giovanni said, already pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. "Chocolate chip or blueberry?" "Both." Lily bounced in her seat. "Mom, can we stay here forever? I like it here. And Mr. Giovanni said he'd teach me to draw buildings today." My heart cracked. "Baby, we've been imposing on Mr. Giovanni's hospitality. We can't stay forever." "Why not?" She looked between us with 5-year-old logic. He has lots of rooms. And he doesn't mind, do you, Mr. Giovanni? Giovanni met my eyes over Lily's head. I don't mind at all. Lily, sweetie, go wash your hands before breakfast, I said gently. She hopped off the stool and scampered toward the bathroom, leaving us alone again. She's already attached to you, I said quietly. That's exactly what I was afraid of. If we leave now, she'll ask questions I don't know how to answer. Then don't leave. Giovanni began mixing pancake batter with practiced efficiency. Stay. Figure out what this could be when it's not about protection or arrangements. When it's just about two people who might actually want to see where this goes. You run a criminal organization, Giovanni. You negotiate with Russian mobsters. You have enemies who would use me and Lily as leverage if they knew we meant something to you. My hands tightened around the coffee mug. How am I supposed to build a life around that kind of danger? By understanding that my world isn't separate from who I am. It's part of me. But so is the man who makes pancakes for your daughter and wants to teach her architecture. The man who stayed up 3 nights running security checks to make sure you could sleep safely. The man who would burn down half of Chicago before letting anyone hurt you. He poured batter onto the griddle. I'm not asking you to love the criminal. I'm asking if you can love the whole complicated mess of who I actually am. Lily returned before I could answer, chattering about the drawing lesson, and could she please have extra chocolate chips. We ate breakfast together like a family, and the domesticity of it terrified me more than any warehouse confrontation. Because this felt right, natural. Like we'd been doing this for years instead of days. After breakfast, I made a decision. I'm going to work tomorrow. Back to my regular shift at the hospital. Giovanni looked up sharply. That might not be wise. The treaty with the Bratva is new. We don't know. I need to do this, I interrupted. I need to prove to myself that I can have a normal life. That I'm not just hiding in your penthouse waiting for the next threat. If this is going to work, if we're going to work, I have to maintain some part of who I was before all this. He studied me for a long moment. Then you'll have a driver. And security at the hospital. Non-negotiable. Fine. I'd learned to pick my battles. But invisible security. I don't want armed guards following me through the pediatric ward. Monday morning arrived with familiar routine. I dropped Lily at kindergarten, kissed her goodbye, and headed to Lurie Children's for my first shift in over a week. The hospital greeted me with its usual chaos. Sick children, worried parents. The antiseptic smell and beeping monitors that had become my second home. My supervisor pulled me aside first thing. Jessica, good to see you back. How's the family emergency? Resolved. Thank you for being understanding. Of course. We were actually contacted by one of our major donors about your situation. Generous man. Made sure your position was protected while you were gone. She smiled knowingly. New boyfriend must have connections. I didn't correct her. Easier to let people assume whatever they wanted than try to explain the truth. The shift passed in familiar rhythm. IV checks, medication rounds, comforting a 3-year-old with pneumonia. Around 2 p.m, I was updating charts when I got pulled into the room of one of our long-term patients. 7-year-old Marcus had been fighting leukemia for 8 months. He was in for his latest round of chemo. Weak, but still somehow optimistic. Nurse Jessica. He brightened when I entered. You're back. I missed you. I missed you too, buddy. I checked his vitals, noting them in his chart. How are you feeling today? Tired, but Mom says I'm a fighter. He picked at the hospital blanket. Nurse Jessica, can I ask you something? Always. Do you believe in happy endings? Like in the movies? The question hit harder than it should have. I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. I believe happy endings are possible when people are brave enough to fight for them. Even when things get scary. Even when it seems easier to give up. My mom says that too. She says we have to be brave. And Marcus looked at me with eyes too old for 7. Are you being brave about something, Nurse Jessica? Out of the mouths of children. Yeah, Marcus, I think I am. Then you'll get your happy ending. Just like me. His confidence was absolute. We're both fighters. I left his room with tears stinging my eyes, and a clarity I hadn't felt in days. Marcus was fighting for his life every single day, and here I was, hesitating to fight for my own happiness, because it came wrapped in complications. My shift ended at 7. I walked to the parking garage, texting Giovanni that I was heading out. The October evening had turned cold, my breath visible in the dim light of the concrete structure. The garage cameras caught everything, and hospital security walked in 30 seconds after he fled. That's when Tyler appeared, stepping out from between two cars. "We need to talk." His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "About your new boyfriend and the very interesting information I've been gathering about him." "Tyler, I'm not doing this." I moved toward my car. "Go home to your pregnant wife." He grabbed my arm. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop me. "Giovanni Fioraldi owns 4 Italian restaurants, also suspected of running organized crime operations throughout Chicago's financial district. Did you know that? Or did you just see money and decide your morals were negotiable? Let go of me." I pulled my arm free. "Who I date is none of your business. It is when you're exposing my daughter to criminals." Tyler stepped closer. "That's right. She's still my daughter, even if you've done everything possible to erase me from her life. And I will not let you drag her into some mobster's world. Your daughter, rage I'd been suppressing for 5 years, erupted. You walked out when I was pregnant. You married my cousin. You've never asked to see Lily, never paid a dime of support, never showed the slightest interest in being her father. You don't get to suddenly care about her safety when it's convenient for your righteous indignation. I care enough to protect her from making the same mistakes you did, getting involved with the wrong kind of man, ruining your future." Tyler's face twisted with something ugly. "I'm going to the police. I'm going to tell them everything I know about Fioraldi. And when he's arrested, I'm filing for custody of Lily, proving you're an unfit mother who exposes children to danger." Cold fear replaced anger. "You can't do that." "Watch me." Tyler turned to leave. "Stay away from him, Jess, or lose everything. That won't be necessary." Giovanni's voice cut through the garage like a knife. He emerged from the shadows near the elevator, Franco beside him. Both men moved with the dangerous grace of predators who'd found prey. Tyler's face went pale. "This is harassment. I'll call security." "Please do." Giovanni stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed but eyes glacial. "I'd love to explain to hospital security why you're threatening my girlfriend in a parking garage after grabbing her forcibly. I barely touched her. The security cameras will tell a different story." Franco gestured toward the corner where a camera was indeed positioned. "Chicago takes assault seriously, even when it's an ex-husband who can't accept that he no longer has control. You can't threaten me." But Tyler's voice wavered. "I'm not threatening you." Giovanni stepped forward. "I'm informing you of consequences." "Franco?" Franco pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Tyler James Mitchell. Inside, you'll find a very detailed accounting of your failure to pay child support for Lily Reed. 5 years of documented abandonment. A legal petition for full back payment plus interest, totaling approximately $43,000. And a restraining order that will be filed if you continue to harass Jessica." Tyler snatched the envelope. "This is bullshit. I never agreed to pay support, because you abandoned them before she could file." Giovanni's voice was ice. "But abandonment doesn't erase responsibility. My lawyer is very thorough. He's prepared to pursue this through every legal channel available. And trust me, Tyler, you don't want to go to war with someone who has better lawyers than you have excuses. You're threatening me with legal action?" Tyler looked between them. "I'll fight this." "Please do." Giovanni smiled, and it was terrifying. "Drag it through court. Let a judge examine your complete absence from your daughter's life. Let them see how you married Jessica's cousin 6 months after walking out on a pregnant woman. Let them decide who the unfit parent actually is. You can't. I can. And I will. But here's an alternative." Giovanni's voice softened fractionally. "Walk away. Leave Jessica alone. Stop pretending you suddenly care about Lily after 5 years of complete indifference. Do that, and these documents never get filed. You go back to your life, and we never have this conversation again." The silence stretched. Tyler looked at the envelope, then at me, then back to Giovanni. "Fine." He threw the envelope on the ground. "Keep her. Keep both of them. But when this all falls apart, don't come crying to me." He walked away, footsteps echoing through the garage. Giovanni waited until Tyler's car started and drove away before turning to me. "Are you okay?" I wasn't. I was shaking, adrenaline crashing through my system. "You had him investigated, had lawyers draw up documents. When?" The moment I realized he was going to be a problem, Giovanni picked up the envelope Tyler had discarded. "I don't wait for threats to materialize, Jessica. I eliminate them before they can hurt people I care about. And what happens when the threat is you?" The words came out harsher than intended. "When your world is what puts Lily in danger, then I'll eliminate that threat too." His eyes held mine. "Even if that means eliminating myself from your life. But you have to make that choice, Jessica." "I can't make it for you." Franco cleared his throat. "I'll wait in the car. Give you two some privacy." We stood alone in the cold parking garage while I tried to figure out what I wanted, what I could live with, what risks were worth taking and which ones would break us. "Take me home," I said finally. "To the penthouse. We need to talk." Giovanni nodded, offering his arm. I took it, and we walked to his SUV together, while I tried to figure out how to explain that I'd already made my choice. And it terrified me more than any threat Tyler could ever pose. 2 weeks passed in a blur of new routines and careful negotiations between my old life and this new one we were building. I'd moved most of my clothes to the penthouse but kept my apartment, using it as a quiet space when I needed to think, or when Lily had playdates with school friends whose parents didn't need to know about the complicated man in our lives. Giovanni proved remarkably adaptable to the chaos of living with a 5-year-old. He learned that Lily needed exactly 3 bedtime stories, that she refused to eat vegetables unless they were hidden in pasta sauce, and that Tuesday mornings were always harder because she missed her weekend freedom. He attended a parent-teacher conference with me, sitting in a chair designed for someone half his size, while Mrs. Rodriguez praised Lily's progress in reading. "She's a bright girl," the teacher had said, looking between us with obvious approval. "It's wonderful to see her thriving with both parents involved." I hadn't corrected the assumption. Neither had Giovanni. Camila adapted to the new arrangement with surprising grace. She continued watching Lily after school, but now one of Giovanni's drivers picked them both up and brought them to whichever location I was working from. The penthouse or occasionally my old apartment when I needed the familiarity. The driver, a quiet man named Anthony who treated Lily like a beloved niece, became part of our extended family. "This is insane," Camilla said one afternoon while Lily colored at the kitchen island. 2 weeks ago you were a single mom barely making rent. Now you're living in a penthouse with a man who has actual security teams." "I know." I poured her tea, a ritual we'd maintained despite everything changing. "Does it make me a terrible person that I'm happy?" "It makes you human." She squeezed my hand. "But be careful, Jess. Happiness this sudden can disappear just as fast." My family's reaction had been more complicated. My mother called daily, torn between pride that I'd landed someone successful and concern about how little she actually knew about Giovanni. Lauren, however, surprised me by being genuinely supportive. She'd invited us to dinner Saturday night to celebrate her 32nd birthday at Giovanni's newest restaurant in River North. "I want to get to know him properly," she'd said when she called. "Not as the mysterious man from Sophia's wedding, but as the person who's making my sister smile again." Saturday evening arrived with October cold that promised winter wasn't far behind. I dressed carefully in a forest green dress that Giovanni had insisted on buying despite my protests about him spending money on me. Lily wore burgundy velvet, her hair in braids that had taken me 40 minutes to perfect. "You look beautiful," Giovanni said when we met him in the living room. He wore charcoal gray, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone in that way that made him look simultaneously elegant and dangerous. "Both of you. Mr. Giovanni, are we going to your restaurant?" Lily bounced excitedly. "The one with the really good breadsticks." "A different one. This one specializes in Northern Italian cuisine." He crouched to her level. "But I made sure the chef prepared special breadsticks just for you." The restaurant, Fioraldi's River North, occupied a corner building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. Warm light spilled onto the sidewalk, and even from outside I could hear the gentle buzz of conversation and laughter. Giovanni had reserved a private dining room for the family dinner, giving us space away from the main restaurant. Lauren and her husband Daniel arrived first. My sister looked elegant as always, her dark hair styled in waves that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. but her smile when she hugged me was genuine. "Happy birthday," I said, handing her the gift I'd spent too long selecting, a first edition of her favorite childhood book that I'd found at a used bookstore. "Jess." She opened it carefully, eyes going wide. "This must have cost." "It didn't. I know a guy." I winked. "The important thing is you love it." Daniel shook Giovanni's hand with the assessing grip of a surgeon who spent his days holding people's lives in his hands. "Good to finally meet you properly. Lauren's been very curious." As she should be. Giovanni's response was smooth. I'd be suspicious too if my sister suddenly appeared with someone new. My parents arrived next. My father uncomfortable in a suit he clearly didn't wear often. My mother already scanning the room with critical eyes. They'd met Giovanni briefly at Sophia's wedding, but this was different. This was them evaluating whether the man dating their daughter was worthy. "Mr. and Mrs. Reed." Giovanni greeted them with old-world courtesy. "Thank you for joining us to celebrate Lauren's birthday." "It's your restaurant," my mother said, accepting his hand. "We should be thanking you for hosting." Sophia and her new husband arrived fashionably late, glowing with newlywed happiness. The last to enter was Vanessa, her pregnancy now impossible to ignore at 8 months. She came alone, Tyler notably absent, and the sight of her made my chest tighten with complicated emotions. "Jessica." She kissed my cheek with perfunctory affection. "You look well." "So do you." It wasn't entirely true. She looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep tired that went beyond pregnancy. "How are you feeling?" "Large, uncomfortable. Ready for this to be over." Her hand rested on her swollen belly. "Tyler sends his regrets. Business trip." The lie was obvious. Tyler was avoiding this dinner specifically to avoid Giovanni and me. Part of me was grateful. Part of me wanted him to see what he'd walked away from. Dinner was served in courses, each more exquisite than the last. Giovanni had clearly instructed his chef to impress, and they'd succeeded. The conversation flowed easily once the initial awkwardness faded. My father, who rarely spoke about anything personal, found himself discussing architecture with Giovanni. Lauren and Daniel asked intelligent questions about the restaurant business. Even my mother seemed charmed by the way Giovanni ensured everyone's wine glass stayed full, and how he'd arranged for Lily to have her own special mocktail in a fancy glass. But it was watching Giovanni with Lily that seemed to win them over completely. She'd grown sleepy after dinner, curling against his side on the upholstered bench. He'd adjusted automatically, one arm around her small shoulders, continuing his conversation with my father, while absently stroking her hair, in a gesture so natural it looked like something he'd done 1,000 times before. "He's good with her," Lauren murmured to me when we stepped away to use the restroom. I didn't expect that. Neither did I. I checked my reflection, smoothing my dress. But he is. He's patient and kind, and he treats her like she matters. Because she does matter. To him. Lauren met my eyes in the mirror. "Jess, I've been worried about you for years. Watching you work yourself to exhaustion, raising Lily alone, never letting anyone help. But seeing you tonight, you're different. Lighter. Like you're finally letting yourself be happy. I'm trying." My throat tightened. "Is that okay? Am I allowed to be happy with someone like him?" "Someone like him." Lauren turned to face me fully. "You mean someone successful who treats you with respect? Who clearly adores your daughter? Who looked at our judgmental family and decided you were worth navigating all that drama?" She squeezed my shoulders. "Jess, he's not the problem. Tyler was the problem. Mom's expectations were the problem. You thinking you didn't deserve better was the problem." We returned to find dessert being served, an elaborate tiramisu birthday cake that had Lily's eyes going wide with delight. Lauren blew out her candles surrounded by family, and for the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt like I belonged. Vanessa left shortly after cake, claiming exhaustion, but before she went, she stopped beside my chair. "I'm glad you're happy," she said quietly. "I mean that. I thought I was taking something you wanted, but maybe you dodged a bullet. Tyler isn't—" She stopped, one hand pressed to her side. "He isn't what I thought he was. Vanessa, don't." She held up her hand. I made my choices. You made yours. I just wanted to say I see now that you got the better deal. She nodded toward Giovanni, who was showing Lily how to properly fold a napkin into a swan. Hold on to that one. Men like that are rare. She was gone before I could respond, leaving me with questions I didn't know how to ask, and sympathy I hadn't expected to feel. The evening wound down slowly. My parents thanked Giovanni profusely, my father even going so far as to suggest they should have dinner again soon. Sophia and her husband invited us to a double date. Lauren hugged me tight and whispered that she approved completely. We drove home through Chicago's glittering nightscape, Lily asleep in her car seat between us in the back of the SUV. Giovanni's hand found mine across the space, fingers lacing together in the darkness. Your family likes me, he said, sounding faintly surprised. They love you. There's a difference. I squeezed his hand. You charmed them, especially my mother, which I didn't think was possible. I had help. He nodded toward Lily. Hard to dislike someone when their daughter's already claimed me as hers. Is that what she did? She told your mother tonight that I taught her to draw buildings and that she's going to be an architect like her mommy when she grows up. His voice carried warmth I was learning to recognize. Then she announced that I was her favorite grown-up after you and Camilla. My heart cracked open a little wider. Giovanni, I know what you're going to say. That we need to be careful. That she's already too attached. That if this doesn't work out, she'll be devastated. He looked at me in the dim light from passing street lamps. But Jessica, what if it does work out? What if this is what it looks like when 3 people accidentally become a family? I didn't have an answer to that. But watching him carry Lily upstairs later, tucking her into bed with the practiced care of someone who'd done it before, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we were building something that could last. That night, after Lily was asleep and the penthouse was quiet, Giovanni found me on the terrace overlooking the lake. Thank you, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind, for letting me into your life, for trusting me with her, for giving us a chance even when every logical reason said you shouldn't. Thank you for making it impossible not to. I leaned back against his chest. For the past 2 weeks. For tonight. For every moment you prove that fairy tales might actually exist if you're brave enough to believe in them. We stood there watching Chicago's lights reflect off the water, and I let myself imagine a future where this wasn't temporary, where the man holding me wasn't just someone I was falling for, but someone I'd already fallen for, where my daughter would grow up with a father figure who chose to be there instead of one who'd walked away. 2 weeks. That's all it had been since the warehouse confrontation. Since Giovanni had first suggested making this real, but time didn't matter when something felt this right. When coming home meant walking into a penthouse where a man waited who looked at me like I hung the moon, and a daughter slept peacefully upstairs because she finally felt safe. Maybe Camilla was right. Maybe happiness this sudden could disappear just as fast. But tonight, wrapped in Giovanni's arms under Chicago's October sky, I decided that risk was worth taking, because some things, some people, were worth fighting for. And Giovanni Fioraldi, with his dangerous world and gentle hands and the way he loved my daughter like she'd always been his, was absolutely worth it. The following Saturday evening arrived with a crispness that promised Chicago's winter wasn't far off. 3 weeks had passed since Sophia's wedding. 3 weeks that felt simultaneously like a lifetime, and no time at all. Giovanni had insisted on hosting a formal dinner at his flagship restaurant in the Gold Coast, Fioraldi's on Astor, to celebrate what he cryptically called new beginnings. I'd learned over the past weeks that Giovanni's idea of formal meant reserving the entire second floor of his most exclusive establishment. The one with a Michelin star and a 6-month waiting list for reservations. The one where even Chicago's elite had to call in favors to secure a table. You didn't have to close the whole floor, I'd protested when he told me his plans. I wanted privacy for what I have planned. His expression had been unreadable, that particular mask he wore when he was hiding something. Trust me. So here I stood in the penthouse bedroom we now shared, zipping Lily into a velvet dress the color of burgundy wine, while trying to calm the butterflies rioting in my stomach. Something about tonight felt different, significant in ways I couldn't quite articulate. Mom, You're going to mess up my hair. Lily squirmed away from my fidgeting hands. Mr. Giovanni said I have an important job tonight and I need to look perfect. An important job? I straightened her collar. What kind of job? It's a secret. Her blue eyes sparkled with the particular joy of a 5-year-old entrusted with classified information. But it's a really good secret. The best secret ever. Giovanni appeared in the doorway, devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my old car. His amber eyes swept over us both with open appreciation. My 2 favorite people, looking absolutely beautiful. He crouched to Lily's level. Are you ready for your special assignment tonight? Yes. She bounced on her toes. I practiced all week like you said. Practiced what? I looked between them suspiciously. You'll see. Giovanni stood, offering me his arm. Shall we? The restaurant glowed like a jewel box when we arrived. Warm light spilled through tall windows, illuminating tables set with pristine white linens and crystal that caught the light like captured stars. But the second floor, our floor for the evening, had been transformed into something beyond a simple dinner setting. String lights were woven through the exposed brick walls. Candles flickered on every surface. And in the center of the space, a single long table had been set for 15 people, each place setting marked with a handwritten card in elegant script. My family was already there. My parents stood near the windows, my father pointing out something in the Chicago skyline to my mother, who actually looked pleased rather than critical. Lauren and Daniel chatted with Sophia and her husband near the bar. Even Vanessa had come, her pregnancy now impossible to ignore at nearly 9 months, looking exhausted but present. Jessica. Sophia rushed over to hug me, glowing with newlywed happiness. I'm so glad you're here. Giovanni said this was important. I don't actually know what this is, I admitted. That's because you're terrible at letting people surprise you. Lauren joined us, kissing my cheek. Just relax and enjoy whatever Giovanni's planned. Knowing him, it'll be spectacular. Camilla emerged from the kitchen entrance, her presence surprising me. You didn't think I'd miss this, did you? She hugged me tight. Giovanni called me 3 days ago. Said I needed to be here for something special. Everyone's conspiring against me, I muttered, but couldn't help smiling. Franco was the last to arrive, accompanied by his wife Maria, whom I'd met twice before. He gave Giovanni a subtle nod that seemed to communicate something important before taking his seat. If everyone could sit, Giovanni announced, his voice carrying that natural authority that made people listen. We have much to celebrate tonight. The meal began with courses that showcased the chef's mastery. Each dish was explained by Giovanni himself, who moved between his role as host and restaurateur with practiced ease. He'd seated me at the head of the table, himself to my right, Lily to my left. My family surrounded us, filling the space with conversation and laughter that felt genuine rather than obligatory. Halfway through the main course, my mother leaned across the table. Giovanni, this is extraordinary. Jessica's very lucky to have found someone so accomplished. I'm the lucky one, Mrs. Reed. Giovanni's hand found mine under the table. Your daughter reminds me daily that accomplishment means nothing without someone to share it with. My father, who'd spent most of the evening quietly observing, finally spoke. You're good to her. To both of them. That's all a father can ask. The approval in his voice made my throat tight. My father, who'd barely acknowledged my existence for 5 years, who'd treated my single motherhood like a personal failure, was accepting Giovanni, accepting us, without reservation. Dessert arrived as the evening light faded completely outside, Chicago's skyline transforming into a constellation of lights beyond the windows. Individual chocolate soufflés were placed before each guest, each one garnished with gold leaf that caught the candlelight. Before we indulge, Giovanni stood, tapping his wine glass gently. I have something I need to say. More accurately, something I need to ask. My heart stopped. Around the table, knowing smiles appeared on faces that suggested everyone but me knew what was coming. 3 weeks ago, I attended a wedding as a business obligation. I expected nothing more than mediocre food and forgettable conversation. His eyes found mine. Instead, I found Jessica, sitting alone at a table, trying so hard to be invisible when she deserved to be seen, celebrated, cherished. He moved to stand beside my chair. I approached her with a proposal. A fake arrangement to help us both save face with our families. And Jessica, being simultaneously pragmatic and brave, agreed. We danced. We pretended. We played our parts perfectly. Lily giggled beside me, clearly in on whatever was happening. But somewhere between that dance and this moment, pretending became real. Arrangement became relationship. And I fell completely, irrevocably in love with a woman who works 12-hour shifts to save children's lives, who raises an incredible daughter with grace and humor, who stood in a warehouse and told a Russian mobster he couldn't threaten kids in her city. Tears were already streaming down my face. Giovanni knelt beside my chair, producing a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Jessica Reed, I'm not offering you a fake arrangement anymore. I'm offering you everything real. My world, my heart, my protection, my family name. I'm offering you a partnership where you're not invisible, where you're seen and celebrated every single day. He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the candlelight and threw rainbow fractals across the table. Will you marry me? The restaurant went silent. Even the kitchen sounds seemed to pause. Every eye was on me, waiting. Say yes, Mom. Lily bounced in her chair. Say yes so I can do my special job. Laughter rippled around the table, breaking the tension. I looked at Giovanni, this man who'd entered my life 3 weeks ago and somehow become essential to it. This man who made pancakes for my daughter and negotiated with criminals and looked at me like I hung the moon. Yes. The word came out choked with tears. Yes, of course, yes. Giovanni slid the ring onto my finger. A perfect fit. Then pulled me to my feet and kissed me while my family erupted in applause and cheers. When we finally broke apart, Lily was tugging on Giovanni's sleeve. Now? Can I do it now? Now, he confirmed, lifting her onto her chair so she stood tall enough to be seen by everyone. Lily reached into a small burgundy purse I hadn't noticed her carrying and pulled out a small velvet pouch. From it, she extracted 2 rings, simple bands that gleamed gold in the candlelight. These are the wedding rings, she announced proudly. Mr. Giovanni said I get to be the ring bearer when you get married, but he also said I get to hold them now so everyone knows it's real and official and I'm going to be part of the family forever. She handed the rings to Giovanni with the ceremonial gravity only a 5-year-old could muster. The entire table melted into laughter and tears and applause again. Forever, Giovanni confirmed, looking at Lily with such open affection, it cracked my heart wider. You're both stuck with me now. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and champagne toasts, and my mother crying while insisting she wasn't crying. Lauren hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, whispering that she'd never seen me this happy. Sophia and her husband offered to help plan the wedding. Even Vanessa approached, one hand on her swollen belly. I meant what I said before, she said quietly. I'm genuinely happy for you. Tyler is... She paused, choosing words carefully. Tyler is Tyler, but Giovanni is something else entirely. Hold on to this one. I will. I promised. How are you doing? Really? Tired. Pregnant. Reconsidering every life choice that led me here. She managed a wry smile. But that's a conversation for another day. Tonight is about you finally getting what you deserve. As the evening wound down, I found myself on the restaurant's terrace with Giovanni, looking out over Chicago's glittering nightscape. Music drifted from inside where Lily was dancing with Franco, her laughter carrying on the October wind. 3 weeks, I said, leaning against the railing. 3 weeks ago, I was sitting at a wedding feeling sorry for myself. Now I'm engaged to a man I'm pretty sure I've been in love with since that first dance. Love at first sight. Giovanni wrapped his arms around me from behind. My mother always said it was possible, that souls recognize each other instantly when they're meant to. Your mother would have liked this. I covered his hands with mine. All of it. The chaos, the complications, the single mother with a 5-year-old daughter. She would have adored you. His voice carried warmth and sadness intertwined. And she would have reminded me that the best things in life are worth fighting for, even when, especially when, they're complicated. So what happens now? I turned in his arms to face him. We plan a wedding? Figure out how to merge my normal life with your complicated one? Explain to Lily that her new stepfather runs restaurants and also has very serious meetings with very serious people? We take it one day at a time. He kissed my forehead. We build something real from the pretend foundation we started with. We prove that fairy tales can exist even in worlds that aren't supposed to have them. Music shifted inside. The DJ Giovanni had apparently hired for the evening started playing the same song that had been playing at Sophia's wedding, the one we'd danced to that first night when this had all been fake. "Dance with me," Giovanni said, offering his hand just like he had 3 weeks ago at table 12. One more time. But this time, for real. I took his hand. We moved back inside where our families waited, where Lily spun in circles with Camilla, where my parents watched with actual happiness in their eyes, where everyone who mattered had gathered to celebrate something that had started as pretend and become the most real thing in my life. Giovanni pulled me onto the dance floor. His hand settled at my back in that same spot it had found 3 weeks ago. But this time, there was no pretense. No arrangement. No fake relationship to help us save face. This time, it was just a man who'd seen me when I felt invisible, and a woman who'd learned that sometimes the best things in life come wrapped in complications you never expected. "I love you," I whispered against his chest as we swayed to music and laughter and the sound of my daughter's joy. "I love you both," he replied. "My family, my home, my everything." 3 weeks. That's all it had taken for my entire world to transform. For a fake husband at a wedding to become the real partner I'd spend my life with. For a man I'd barely known to become the father my daughter deserved. And standing there in Giovanni's arms, surrounded by everyone who mattered, I finally understood what the cards might have shown if I'd been a tarot reader instead of a nurse. That sometimes, the universe puts exactly the right person in your path exactly when you need them most. That love doesn't follow timelines or logic or any of the rules we think it should. That sometimes, pretending to be someone's wife for one night can lead to actually becoming his wife for a lifetime. And that was the best kind of magic there was.